Hello and welcome back to another video, and this time we've come inside because it's so wild and stormy out there this week that I decided I'd do something else inside. No possibility of filming outside today really. So it's so dark at this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere. We're so much more aware of the darkness in general because of the stormy weather up here in North Wales, and also because of the extended nights. So it's a great time to start to paint inside from the imagination, and I thought today's video would be great to share with you some of the ways in which I generate pictorial ideas through using black ink or any black liquids to generate those kind of fantasy images or nighttime dreamscape kind of images that can become beautiful drawings or illustrations even in their own right, or can lead into other possibilities for larger scale work. So I'm going to take you through working with ink this morning, simply black ink and water and a variety of dip pens and sticks and brushes, and we'll try out some things maybe you haven't tried before. And this is a really great time of year in darkest November to let your imagination really go free. Okay, so there's two pictures here that I started a little bit earlier on, and I might come back and work into those in a minute. So it gives you a flavour of what we might be creating. I'll just turn that over. I've got some white paper just surrounding this. Now you can use any sort of sturdy white thick drawing paper really, or I'm using watercolour paper this morning, and I'm using the rough paper, the rough feeling paper, which is called Knot, and I'm painting onto this as I've described before. And all I've got here is I've got some Chinese ink, but you can use Indian ink. You can even use dilute black paint for this. And I've also got some kind of dip pens and some brushes, and I've got these kind of pieces of carved bamboo that you can find. You can even use sticks from outside, or really kind of all sorts of things. You can even use things that are lying around the house, like cleaning sponges or cloths or tissues, and I've got a sponge there that I'm going to use to create some textures. So just that in a pot of water. I'm going to start off here by simply wetting the paper very thoroughly and allowing that to soak in, which of course this watercolour paper, it'll cobble a little bit, but it'll flatten out again afterwards if it's the 300 grams weight paper. So I'm just starting off, this is just one way to soak the paper, and then I've poured a little bit of ink here into a smaller pot, and I've actually added a little bit of water into that, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a quite big brush and just have a bit of fun creating any sort of shape on here. And you see what happens when I simply drop that ink on there. I might do something different over here. Maybe I'll do a kind of line like that. Now it immediately spans out right across the paper, and it will go on moving and changing until it's dry actually. So whatever you see now, it's going to alter and change a bit. And really what I like to do is just begin to look into these sort of shapes and see what begins to emerge and kind of fires my imagination. Now, of course, what's already going through your mind might come up as shapes that you can kind of develop into. These begin to look to me a little bit like sea anemones. This begins to look like a face with an incredibly long neck going into a body that's shaped so strangely there. So the next thing I might do is use a smaller brush. You can use all sorts of things here, and then make some kind of smaller shapes. I might try and make some arms there actually. Maybe it's some kind of creature and some fingers. I'll do it on the other side as well. And then down here I might use a little bit of that ink. I've just poured a little bit of that ink onto a plate here, and I'm using a sponge now just to begin to create some textured shapes there. So it makes some different sorts of marks. What I'd also like to do sometime is just use a dip pen then in the ink and make some finer marks there. So actually I'm going to imagine these are sort of flying, I'm going to look at some sort of flying amoeba. A little bit spidery too, I guess, but I'm just seeing things in the shape and kind of developing it. Actually it starts to look a little bit like a face there, so I'm going to draw that into a bit of a face. But at this point the paper is still really damp, so whatever you draw is going to merge and change and blend. It's starting to look like some sort of dark star. Where the paper is dry, if you've left some dry bits, I haven't left many there, you can kind of splatter. This is a technique that Gerald Scarfe uses a lot in his cartoons. He's a good artist to look at for pen and ink. And just really kind of experiment a bit with mark making, have a bit of fun and see what happens really. So I'm just going to, it's a sort of doodling, but something or nothing may come out of what you do. I quite like that shape. I'm just going to go around that again. It's like a sort of a ammonite. Looks like it's holding on to this. The time of year when my son's not been very well, so we've been indoors, we've been watching some movies, we've been watching Harry Potter, we've been watching some of The Hobbit, these amazing fantasy worlds. And a time of year when we'll be having a lot more vivid dreams, so even if we're waking up at night, it's quite nice to just get up and draw out our imaginings, our sensations. And if they're dark in mood, dark in feeling, it's okay. It's okay just to explore them a bit, make them into something. These look like sort of moon shapes. I'm going to make these into faces, I've decided. I don't know if you can tell their faces from here. They look like kind of jelly bean faces. I'll create some jelly bean people here. So I'm just working with my dip pen there. As I say, you get a similar result if you use some dilute. If you haven't got any black ink, but you've got some black acrylic paint or watercolour paint, you could use that. Or another colour, it doesn't have to be black, a strongly contrasting colour like dark blue, dark brown, because it provides that sort of contrast that you get that is very suggestive to the imagination. Now I'm going to dilute this a bit more. You can dilute the ink and you can begin to paint on top. This starts to look a little bit like a mountain to me in some ways. I think I'm going to use that. Now that's dried out a bit, I'm going to use the sponge again. And then actually use a brush to draw on top some kind of stick shapes or suggestions of trees, branches. Which, if it had been dry and calm outside, or even just dry and not too windy, it was my intention to do one of trees in ink, and it's another way you can do it. Now the trees, at least in this part of the world, have lost their leaves, and against the sky is so often not very colourful, so you can paint them against a grey background just with ink and dip pens. It's quite an effective way to do it. So I'm just working into these a little bit, and I might do a bit more splashing of that one over there. So get something to splash it with. I know, I'll use the brush. There we go. Don't like anything, you can just work with the water. And you'll soon find that as the paper dries out, you get some interesting edges to the marks that you've made that may be suggestive of landforms, people, creatures. It's taking us right out of what's mundane and everyday. It starts to look a little bit less like a creature then, a bit more like a tree actually. So I'm going to just change that into a sort of... I always had a vivid imagination, so whenever I'm in woods or see trees, I see faces in the bark, in the shapes of the bark and the knolls of the wood. Oh, that starts to look like some sort of animal coming out there. I think I'll make that into some sort of animal. I quite like to work with 2 or 3 or 4 pictures at a time, because as one is drying, you can go and work on another one that's maybe already dried, and then you've got a kind of series, and you're not just sitting waiting. So I don't like to be a bit impatient person. I like to be continuously working when I am working. That makes sense. And you can build up these kind of layers. I'm not sure what's happening down there, but I think I'm going to work into that bit of it over there as well. But it's quite a nice surprise to let something dry and then go back and have a look at it. So something's changed in it. See what I can do with that. So all these skills we learn when I'm doing the more kind of conventional skills, like, you know, was doing the Britannia Bridge skills, and this is the time when you can kind of, having practiced those things, you can, if you saw a bridge emerging from this picture, you could probably have a good go at drawing it with some real knowledge in your skill base. So having those skills that you've developed and worked on helps you with the work that's more imaginative, because you can kind of realise and make look more authentic what it is that comes out of your imagination. So I'm just going to work into these a little bit more. I'll probably carry on with this once the video's stopped. You can see some other shapes emerging here. This looks like some sort of giant stingray emerging onto the land. Well, kind of, yeah, it does look like that. So I think I'm going to work into that. You can actually, depending on what you're using, ink or paint, you can actually work into that a little bit using some water though. I'm just actually lifting that off again. I've got a tissue in my pocket, that may help as well. Yes, I have. So you can use a tissue to, like you've done in watercolour techniques, just lift that away again if you want to kind of work in and find and define a shape that you see beginning to emerge there. I think, yeah, so actually sort of take that away, and it's all trading off almost in a ghostly way down there. It's like a genie coming out of a pot. A genie shaped like a ray. I remember as a student I liked to look at the dark paintings of Victor Hugo, the novelist, who's better known for his novels like Notre Dame, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and his poetry. But I came across his paintings and was really stunned. So he's an artist worth looking at as well, to see the range of. I'll give you some ideas, but you don't really need to get ideas for this except through yourself, really, through these processes of accident, chance, spontaneity and open-mindedness. Even if it just turns out to be really abstract without anything kind of realistic emerging, then you can really enjoy the process of making marks. That's great for insomniacs. So I'll probably work into those, and I'll put the finished versions up online. So there you go, just with a few implements, just your regular brushes. All you need is a little pot of ink or black paint, and you can create a different sort of a world on the paper. Here's one I did a little bit earlier as well. It's not quite dry yet, and there's more to be worked into here, but I see a kind of an elephant emerging here, and I put some birds on top, so I maybe make the elephant a little bit clearer, and there's a sort of elf type figure appearing at the bottom, and then this is beginning to look a bit more like some rocks, so I'll probably work into that one. And then this one just started off with a circle, and it started to look a bit more like a giant eye, or the moon becoming like an eye. So again, I might develop that a bit more, and there seems to be some other kinds of mountainscapes or rocks coming down here, so I might work into these. Of course, there's nothing to say you can't add colour into these and add other media as well, so we might look at some mixed media another time. But to create dramatic paintings, you don't really need anything more than some black ink and freedom of spirit and your mind. Have a go at it. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and do share it with friends who can't get out to art classes, and let me know your thoughts. I love to hear from you. Thanks very much.